In a strong, clear voice, Harold Wayne Nichols began to tell the jury a little about himself. He cried as he described a difficult childhood, losing his mother when he was only 10 and spending some time in an orphanage.
After spending more than 35 years on death row, Harold Wayne Nichols reached his end in the state of Tennessee. His name became tied to one of the most brutal crimes ever committed in Chattanooga, a case disturbing not only for its violence but for the uncomfortable questions it left behind. It was 1988. In a quiet neighborhood where calm seemed guaranteed day after day. A young college student alone in her home, a prowler watching from the darkness, an open window, and an impulse impossible to restrain.
It was Friday, September 30th, 1988. Across the United States, everyone was talking about a new baseball record. Orel Hershiser had pitched 59 consecutive scoreless innings, a milestone dominating newscasts, radio programs, and casual conversations. And every music station kept replaying the same hit, "Don't Worry, Be Happy" by Bobby McFerrin. It felt like a light, almost optimistic moment in time. In Chattanooga, Tennessee, the Brainerd neighborhood followed its usual rhythm. It was a quiet residential area with modest houses, well-kept yards, and tree-lined streets. Night fell without urgency. Cars returned from work, televisions glowed behind yellow windows, and dogs barked in the distance. The end of another ordinary day. In one of those houses lived 21-year-old Karen Pulley, a student at Chattanooga State University. That night, she was alone in her second-floor bedroom. Her two roommates were not home, and Karen was likely ending her day as any student would, finishing assignments, preparing for the next morning, or simply resting before going to sleep. She was focused, responsible, organized, and driven. But while the neighborhood settled into its routine, someone else was moving through the streets with a very different intention. 27-year-old Harold Wayne Nichols had been prowling the area for weeks, watching homes, looking for open windows, studying patterns. That night, he parked his car a few blocks away in silence. He got out, looked around, and at a glance could have passed as a neighbor returning home late, but he wasn't heading toward his own house. Nichols walked to Karen's home and slipped toward the back, searching for a way in. Along the way, he armed himself with a 2x4 piece of lumber. It didn't take long for him to find what he was looking for, a bathroom window he could climb through. He opened it carefully and slid inside. The house was completely silent. He went upstairs and found Karen's bedroom. She was asleep when he entered. She woke up startled. She tried to scream, but the first blow left her disoriented. Nichols attacked her with incomprehensible violence. He tore off her underwear, and as she struggled, he sexually assaulted her. Karen fought with everything she had. Each attempt to resist only enraged him further. He struck her again and again in the head with the piece of wood until she stopped moving. Then, Nichols left the house unseen and disappeared into the night. Outside, the neighborhood remained asleep, unaware of what had just happened. The next morning, one of her roommates went upstairs to wake her. What she saw made her scream. Karen was on the floor, surrounded by blood. She was still breathing, but barely. The emergency call came in immediately. Paramedics entered the room and confirmed the severity of the injuries. She had skull fractures and massive brain trauma. Karen was taken to the hospital, but her condition was almost irreversible. She died the next day, October 2nd, 1988, without ever regaining consciousness. Meanwhile, officers secured the scene. They examined the room and noted anything that could become evidence. At that moment, there were no clear fingerprints, no witnesses, and no obvious signs of who had entered the house. The scene was clean in a disturbing way. It showed the ferocity of the attack but offered very little for investigators to work with. The investigation moved forward slowly in the following weeks. The neighborhood remained on alert. There were no concrete suspects. Police only knew that the attacker had entered through a bathroom window, had gone straight upstairs to Karen's room, and had used extreme violence. But the case took an unexpected turn 3 months later. Between December 1988 and January 1989, a series of sexual assaults shook Chattanooga. They all followed the same pattern: a man prowling at night, entering through open windows, and attacking women who were home alone. The modus operandi was eerily familiar. On January 5, 1989, police received information about a possible suspect, Harold Wayne Nichols. In less than 24 hours, multiple victims identified him in a lineup. Within hours, 4 women pointed to him as their attacker. That was the breaking point. Detectives questioned him that same night. There was no need for pressure, no struggle. According to official reports, Nichols began talking almost immediately. He confessed to the assaults linked to him, and then, without being asked directly, he went a step further. He confessed to the attack on Karen Pulley. He described how he had prowled the area for weeks, how he had climbed through the bathroom window, how he had surprised her while she slept, how she had tried to resist, and how he had used the piece of wood to strike her repeatedly. He recounted everything with a coldness that froze the interrogation room. In the early hours of January 7th, he took a detective to a vacant lot in East Ridge. He pointed to a spot in the overgrowth. There it was, the piece of wood he had used to strike Karen. It was the missing evidence. The next day, January 8th, another key element emerged. His wife, Joanna, spoke with an officer and said that Nichols had also confessed the crime to her, but with a very different explanation. He told her it had all been an accident. As investigators assembled the evidence, they uncovered something that added outrage to the case. Nichols had a serious criminal history and had been released from prison only months before Karen's murder. In 1984, he had been convicted of attempted sexual assault. He served only 18 months before being released. He violated parole. In 1987, he was arrested again for prowling near a woman's home at night with a knife. He was sent back to jail for 1 year. And most disturbing of all, on June 1st, 1988, just 4 months before the attack on Karen, he was released again. During July and August, according to his wife, he began going out alone at night. Nichols would later admit that he felt an energy pushing him to seek victims. Between September and January, he confessed to assaulting or attempting to assault 12 women, possibly more. When detectives connected that history with his confession, the recovered weapon, and the victim identifications, they knew the investigation was over. The name now had a face, and the horror, finally, had a responsible party. There was no turning back. Harold Wayne Nichols was born on December 31st, 1960, in Cleveland, Tennessee. He was 27 years old at the time of the attack on Karen Pulley. His life had been shaped by a harsh upbringing. He grew up in a poor family marked by violence. His father, described in court documents as mean, abusive, and utterly vile, created an environment where mistreatment was part of daily life. His mother, Nanny Lou, died of cancer when he was only 10 years old, and after her death, the abuse worsened. He was placed in an orphanage for a short time, but eventually returned to his father's home. Despite that turbulent background, Nichols' adult life appeared surprisingly ordinary from the outside. He enlisted in the Army and received an honorable discharge in 1984. 2 years later, he married Joanna, who described him as a quiet man with simple routines. He also worked as an assistant manager at Godfather's Pizza, where he was considered a reliable employee. But behind that normal facade, something darker was growing. Nichols spoke of a sensation he couldn't control, a kind of strange energy that pushed him to go out at night. He did not know Karen Pulley, nor did he have any connection to her. He chose her the same way he had chosen his other victims, by opportunity, by accessibility, by vulnerability. He presented himself to the world as a functional and ordinary man, yet inside he carried a destructive impulse that consumed him completely. Sometimes the most ordinary faces hide the deepest shadows. The criminal proceedings against Harold Wayne Nichols began on May 9, 1990. Because of the extensive media coverage, the jury was selected in Sumner County, although the trial itself took place in Hamilton County. From the first day, the prosecution's strategy was straightforward. They sought to prove that the murder of Karen Pulley had occurred during the commission of a sexual assault, and that Nichols was not an impulsive offender, but a repeat predator with multiple prior attacks. Nichols chose to plead guilty to first-degree murder committed during a felony, aggravated sexual assault, and first-degree robbery. He denied nothing. With that admission, the trial moved immediately into its most tense phase, the determination of his sentence. The prosecution presented two powerful aggravating factors: The murder had been committed during a sexual assault, and Nichols had 5 previous convictions for aggravated sexual assault. Forensic experts described Karen's injuries in detail, including skull fractures, massive brain trauma, evidence of sexual assault, and the blows inflicted with the piece of wood. The physical evidence, the videotaped confession, and the sequence of events left no room for alternative interpretations. The defense attempted to present a different picture. They highlighted the childhood abuse that had shaped Nichols' early life, the beatings he suffered at the hands of his father, and the emotional impact of losing his mother at the age of 10. Psychologists described him as a quiet man who struggled to control violent impulses, but who understood the nature of his actions. Nichols also addressed the court. He spoke about the energized feeling that pushed him to go out at night. "I just get these feelings, and I do it," he said. "I cannot describe it or understand it." The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Their decision was unanimous: the death penalty. He also received 60 years for aggravated sexual assault and 15 years for robbery. His fate was sealed. After the conviction, Nichols' attorneys began a series of appeals in state and federal courts, opening a legal path that would stretch on for decades. Their strategy focused on 3 main arguments. They questioned the validity of his confession, claimed that his trial defense had been ineffective, and argued that the extreme violence of his childhood should have been given greater weight as a mitigating factor. In the years that followed, each of those claims was reviewed and rejected. In 1994, the Tennessee Supreme Court upheld the sentence, describing the murder of Karen Pulley as an act of extreme brutality. New appeals were filed in 2002 and again in 2013, but the courts maintained the same position. The evidence was overwhelming, the confession had been voluntary, and the legal process had been constitutionally sound. During these years, Nichols lived on death row at Riverbend Maximum Security Institution. He remained there for more than 3 decades, following a rigid routine that rarely changed. He worked maintenance jobs in Unit 2, performing electrical and plumbing repairs. The irony was impossible to ignore. The man who had once chosen electrocution as his preferred method of execution spent his days repairing the electrical system on death row. Staff members described his behavior as exemplary. Over time, he began to draw. Some of his artwork was included in the project Windows on Death Row. He wrote about his art. "Prison has taught me many things, one of them being the importance of the small things in life, like the stars in the night sky." He also developed a relationship with Ann Pulley, Karen's mother, who spoke with him shortly after the sentencing and continued to meet with him for years in conversations centered on faith and forgiveness. In 2020, his execution was temporarily suspended because of the pandemic. In 2022, the state halted all executions due to protocol failures. But in December 2024, Tennessee adopted a new procedure, and finally, in November 2025, set the definitive execution date. His attorneys submitted a clemency petition highlighting his transformation in prison, his relationship with Ann Pulley, and a noteworthy detail. He would be the first person executed in Tennessee for a crime to which he had pled guilty since the state reinstated the death penalty in 1978. Governor Lee did not respond. After so many years of appeals, everything was moving again, and this time, no path remained open. December 11, 2025 was set as the date when the state of Tennessee would carry out the sentence against Harold Wayne Nichols after more than 35 years on death row. It was the 3rd execution scheduled in the state within a span of 7 months, and the first time since 1978 that Tennessee planned to execute someone who had pled guilty to the crime. Nichols refused to choose between the electric chair and lethal injection as state law allows. By declining to choose, the default method became lethal injection using pentobarbital in accordance with the new protocol adopted by Tennessee in December 2024. From that moment on, all pre-execution procedures began to move forward. Nichols was transferred to the designated area. He underwent the required medical evaluation, and formal notification was sent to the approved witnesses. Harold Wayne Nichols requested a final meal of beef brisket with coleslaw, a baked potato, onion rings, cheese biscuits, deviled eggs, and fruit tea. Harold Wayne Nichols was executed in Tennessee and pronounced dead at 10:39 a.m. by lethal injection for the rape and murder of Karen Pulley, a 20-year-old college student. His execution becomes the 46th carried out nationwide in 2025, marking the highest number of executions in the United States since 2010.
The case of Harold Wayne Nichols is the story of a repeat sexual offender who, after regaining his freedom, committed his most violent crime just months after being released from prison. It stands as a brutal reminder of what happens when the system fails to protect those who need it most. Over the years, Nichols seemed to change behind prison walls. He spoke of faith and remorse, and he even developed a spiritual relationship with the mother of his victim. But his own words revealed another truth. He admitted that had he not been arrested, he would have continued attacking. In the end, this case leaves us with a question that has no simple answer. What should the system do with people like this? With those who reoffend, who may be capable of remorse, yet cannot stop themselves? Has justice been served? That is for you to decide. Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and watch more cases like this.